Hello, and welcome to the MMA Mic Drop Podcast. This is episode number 12. My name is Jade Bunke, and I am joined by the one and only Milo McGregor. You know him on Instagram as Milo McShredder. In today's episode, we are going to talk about UFC 300. The UFC 300 card is taking shape, but there's still a few fights that need to be announced, and we're going to talk about what those might be and what they should be. Over the last week or so, Milo, we've had some interesting announcements. We've had 3 more fights that have been added. I believe this will be a 15-fight card, meaning that there can still possibly be 4 more fights added. And I think there's a possibility that there's 3 fights on the main card that haven't even been added. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what those fights should be. How do we make UFC 300 absolutely epic? The foundation has been laid, but some people are upset, some people are happy, and we're going to figure out how to make everybody happy with the right fight card. But with that said, let's get into what we think should be on UFC 300 that can still possibly be on UFC 300. See, I'm making the case that I think there could still be 3 fights added to the main card: the main event, the co-main event, and the featured bout. And so let's start with the obvious, the main card. The main event. You know, there's an opportunity that it's still Dricus du Plessis and Israel Adesanya. I was listening to an interview with Dricus du Plessis' coach, and he said he would not have called out Adesanya if he didn't think he'd be ready for UFC 300. So that tells you Adesanya might be closer to coming back than what a lot of people think. That would be an incredible fight, right? Right at the top. Now, a lot of people are talking about that. That's, not really new news or anything like that. But here's the thing. You have to pair it with the right co-main and the right featured bout to really make this card epic. And so what would be that co-main event? Now, a lot of people are talking about Leon Edwards and Belal Muhammad. I put Leon Edwards on there, not Belal Muhammad. I put Shavkat. And the reason why is, Shavkat's a fight that everybody wants to see that fight. He has that untapped potential. We want to see how good he is. The fans are interested in him. Now you might think, okay, well, Dana White promised Belal Muhammad the next title fight. We don't know if that's true, but if he did, he can still give Belal Muhammad the next title fight after Shavkat and Leon Edwards fights, meaning that you don't have to ask Belal Muhammad to fight again. You say, look, you got the winner, and we're gonna feature you in Abu Dhabi, where you're more popular. In his last fight in Abu Dhabi, he had an incredible reaction, from the fans, and so I think that's a win-win there. And then all of a sudden, you have Dricus du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya. You have Leon Edwards versus Shavkat. Now everything below starts looking a lot better. What are your thoughts with that first scenario?
Yeah, I think that's like the dream scenario, what I would put. That or Israel versus Pereira.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, you make a good point, because if Pereira is not, or I'm sorry, if Dricus du Plessis is not ready, is he a Pereira 3? And again, I think the way that you win over the fans, it's the right pairing between the main and the co-main event, right? You want 2 fights that everybody wants to see. And there's still options. We'll talk about Conor McGregor in a moment. We'll talk about some, absurd possibilities that are unlikely, but we'll just, play around and see if, what's possible. But when we're looking at, building that realistic fight card, you can bring in Alex Pereira, right? You can bring in Alex Pereira versus Magomed Ankalaev. Now, let's be clear. This is Jamal Hill's title. I mean, Jamal Hill, he has next. But if he's unable to go, and Pereira has been talking about doing a quick turnaround, between fights, maybe you have him fight Magomed Ankalaev for the co-main event. Maybe you have him turn around, if he's available, for the Brazil fight card. But, I don't think he has to do that. Given when Jamal Hill might be ready, right? So that's another fight. You can throw in Sean Strickland versus Chimaev. And so imagine if you just put those 4 fights in there, right? Izzy versus DDP, Edwards versus Shavkat, Pereira versus Ankalaev, and Strickland versus Chimaev. No one's going to complain about that card. Everybody's going to be excited, and you just filled up the 4 spots you had left. What are your thoughts on that, or what are some other fights that can possibly meet?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect scenario, but yeah, I wish they would move the 299 Saint Denis fight versus Dustin Poirier to 300 instead of Jessica Andrade and switch those out. But yeah, it's pretty perfect.
Yeah,
I'm not complaining.
Yeah, you know what's interesting. I wanted Saint Denis on this fight card, and a while ago, I don't know if I was talking to you about this, maybe about 2 months ago. That would be cool if before the fight was even announced, Poirier versus Saint Denis. At UFC 300, and then I was thinking as a promotion, maybe slow roll Benoit Saint Denis and give him, somebody that on the periphery of the top 15, somebody maybe like, Bobby Green or something, even in something like that, and so you can watch more fights of Saint Denis before he becomes a big star. But I'm not complaining. I'm excited about that fight. And what that tells us is it gives us a clue in what makes a fight great and what makes a fight intriguing. And it's about anticipation. It's about uncertainty. You anticipate the fight, but you don't know exactly what's going to happen. That's why there's such a big draw towards that Saint Denis versus Poirier fight. And that's what UFC, the UFC brass needs to take into consideration when they're making the main event and the co-main event. It's got to be a fight. It's got to be 2 fights where you're like, I don't know who's going to win. I'm emotionally invested and I'm intrigued, but I'm uncertain. And that's how, the dopamine system works is, based on uncertainty with a certain level of probability about obtaining a certain reward. We won't go into that now. I don't want to tune out the audience, but there is turn off the audience, but there is there is some science behind what makes certain matchups desirable. And so, I'm with you on that. I would have loved to seen that on UFC 300, but I think they could still make some, fights. I think if you make the most intriguing fights with the level of uncertainty to complete the card, I think everybody's going to be happy. With that said, do you have any dark horses, any outliers, any other possible fight matchups that could be UFC 300 worthy?
Maybe Shavkat versus Jared Cannonier.
Wrong divisions, dude.
Yeah, it's okay. They can still fight.
You still want them?
I want to see that.
You want to see?
Yeah.
I know you love Shavkat. You just want him with the biggest, the biggest possible challenge.
Because he's not human. He's like an alien.
Human, yeah.
Take him.
And for all of you watching, I think this is the what draws us into Shavkat. There's so much intrigue, so much mystery. We're like, how good is this guy? Let's see him against, the best. Let's see him against, some incredible challenges, because we don't know what's going to happen and we don't know how good he is. We hope and we think he's as good as we think he is, but we just don't know. All right. Any realistic fights that you think could get on here, or do you have another crazy one that you'd like to see?
I was gonna say Cosmo versus Sean Strickland, but no, not really. I think you've listed like the fights I want on there.
Yeah, you know what? I think Strickland versus Cosmo. That would be an incredible.
Or maybe Pantoja versus Brandon Moreno too.
Yeah, their fight. Moreno, his fights again. His fight's coming up pretty soon. I think it's right after UFC 298. If he wins, that's a very quick turnaround. That would be pretty sick. But what about Pantoja versus Kai Kara France? And this allows you to incentivize Izzy to, make that return to 300. Hey, it's one of your teammates. We'll give him a title shot. Kai Kara France is ranked number 4. Despite what the judges said, he did not lose that fight against Amir Albazi. He beat him. So he, that would be cool. And now all of a sudden you start to think about all the title fights that are still available. Yeah, there's not a lot, but you can fill out this fight card where you ultimately, if you had 3 more fights, 2 of them title fights, maybe 3 of them title fights, and then it's the Holloway versus Gaethje as your second fight of the main card, and it's your Weili Yan fight as your main event opener. What does that do? That puts Charles Oliveira and Sarukian as your headliner for the for the prelims, which is just absurd. So, and I guess what we're trying to say is there's still a lot of options, even though the fight card is almost complete, that can still make this the most epic fight card ever. UFC 300 could still be epic. I know a lot of people are complaining, and I do understand it with some of the recent announcements. I do, that Andrade I don't think was the right call for UFC 300, but there's a lot they can do. And even think of another prelim headliner. If maybe you only do 2 more main event fights for the main event, what about Cyril Gane versus Pavlovich, right? That has intrigue, right? That has that uncertainty. Yeah. What's going to happen? What are your thoughts?
I think, I didn't even come up with that. That would be a really good fight, actually. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things you want that uncertainty, and the uncertainty there is not only who's not going to win. Oh my God, I hope one of these guys, doesn't die in the cage, because Sergey hits so hard. Now with that, there's one person we're not talking about that I think is 100% UFC 300 worthy, main event worthy, and I think he's the future of the division, and that's Tom Aspinall, who is the baddest man on the planet because everybody is ducking him. Nobody wants to fight him, and I know the UFC offered Stipe an opportunity to fight Aspinall, and he declined. And Aspinall did not decline. Stipe declined, and Aspinall accepted. And I don't know how to read that other than Stipe's ducking him, right? And so what do you do with Tom Aspinall? Do you put him with Cyril Gane? Well, Cyril Gane hasn't really deserved an interim shot, right? That'd still be a cool fight to see. Maybe that's not the main event. Maybe that's a co-main event, right? But I'm going to throw something out there that is so crazy, so wild, because Dana White said we're going to be blown away. Now, again, what I'm going to say has a 99.9% chance of not happening, but it's a fight that I guarantee that's not as gimmicky, that would get everybody intrigued. What if the UFC matched up Tom Aspinall versus Francis Ngannou, cross promotion, right? Now, again, this is insane. And if it happens, you heard it here first. If it does not happen, we never said it. I don't care if I'm on video. I'll completely deny it because that sounds insane. But let me just throw out a wild scenario for you. In that, from the PFL's perspective, you have an opportunity to have one of your fighters on the UFC's biggest card, right? That's a win for them. From the UFC's perspective, you typically never do any you don't do any cross promotion with the number 2 or the number 3 or the number 4 players in the marketplace, right? You don't do that. You don't want to give legitimacy to the brand. That's not the right business move typically. But if you get a fight that is so intriguing that everybody's going to tune into, that will also, from the UFC's perspective, show how much better the UFC is when Tom Aspinall knocks out Francis Ngannou. You might have a win-win where the UFC, hey, here's some money, to the PFL to allow Francis to do this. Here's Francis, you're going to pay him a lot of money. Let's make that happen. Again, probably not. Almost certainly not going to happen. Considering he also has a boxing match, a month before UFC 300. But just saying, if you want something crazy, that's one of those wild scenarios. What are your thoughts, or do you have any other out of left field scenarios for UFC 300?
Yeah, I don't know if that would happen, but since Dana White is saying it's going to be pretty crazy, maybe Pereira versus Tom Aspinall.
Yeah,
I've heard that going around.
Yeah, some people's been talking about that, and I'm wondering if that happens. Let me ask you this: who do you think would win?
Oh, and hello.
See, that's what I think. See that, and that's the thing. Is interesting as that is, it doesn't have that level of uncertainty to it because Tom would destroy, right?
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing. If you think about, let's do a little thought exercise here, because I want to get your opinion on, and this will go to the whole uncertainty premise. What are the 3 fights that you're most looking forward to?
Probably Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. I'm interested. I'm in the Diego Lopez versus Zach. I don't even know how you say his name. Yusuf.
Yeah, City Yusuf.
And then I'm interested in the Charles Oliveira versus Arman Tsarukyan fight.
So it's interesting. We have the same, top 3. My order's a little bit different. I'm most intrigued by the Oliveira Tsarukyan, followed by the Holloway Gaethje, and then the Sadiq versus Lopez. And 2 of the 3, it's because there's so much uncertainty about what's going to happen. Now, for a lot of people, there is less uncertainty for the Max Holloway fight, but you got the two of the biggest names in the UFC.
Yeah.
Both fan favorites. And hey, a lot of people think Justin Gaethje is going to win this fight easily. I don't know. Max Holloway is one of the greatest fighters ever. And you just don't know. And so I am intrigued in that one, but I think a lot of people want to see that because they're fan favorites. But the other fights that are most intriguing, it's not about the former champs. It's not about anything else. It's about what fights are most intriguing. Where's that level of uncertainty? And there's one other fight I would probably, I don't think is UFC 300 worthy. It's the Figueiredo versus Cody Garbrandt. I don't understand why Garbrandt, who has been struggling, who had one impressive win against, an older fighter, is getting a fight against a former champ. And I know Garbrandt's a former champ as well, but a recent former champ who just moved up and beat a higher ranked guy. Why are you fighting somebody that's not in the rankings? And so I think that fight, I like Figueiredo on the card. I don't like Garbrandt on the card. It's that fight and the Andrade fight are the ones that are a little perplexing. Outside of that, UFC 300 is absolutely stacked. And if they make the right choices, if they, don't do Belal versus Leon Edwards for the main or the co-main event, I don't think anyone's talking about that for the main event. But I don't even want to see that on the co-main event, not for UFC 300. What are you going to say?
I just thought of something.
Yeah.
What if it did Islam versus Shavkat?
So wrong divisions again, but
no, they could do it.
No,
I want to see that fight.
No, I know, but
no.
So when you cross divisions, though, you need, it's got to be champ typically, right? And so I know you're probably thinking, okay, well, they just did Holloway versus Gaethje, but that's champ for BMF. But to your point, in terms of crossing divisions, you do have, that'd be a crazy fight to watch. But you do have the possibility. People are talking about Islam moving up to fight Leon Edwards. Now that's main event worthy. That's interesting.
I'd want to see that.
Yeah, because you can see UFC Milo, who represents a large percentage of the fan base, the younger fan base here, wants to see Shavkat fight no matter what. There is the possibility maybe Shavkat versus Usman. If they are going with the Belal Muhammad fight, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, Shavkat versus anybody.
Yeah, so UFC. Honestly. No, we want Shavkat. We want Shavkat. I want Shavkat in the title fight. Let's do it. I definitely want to see Tom Aspinall. Get a showcase. Get a showcase fight. If it's not against, somebody that's competitively appropriate. I think the best one would have been the best alternative, considering everybody's ducking. Tom Aspinall would have been the winner of Gelton Almeida versus Curtis Blades, but that's happening probably too close to UFC 300, and you also don't want to announce a main event, or a co-main event, a month before the fight. So
yeah.
All right. All right. With that said, those are some scenarios. And I guess, one other point I want to make, a lot of people are complaining about 299 being too stacked. Have we got to the point in this sport where we're complaining that a fight card is too good? Because that makes absolutely no sense to me. I'm excited that 298 is stacked. 299 is stacked. UFC 300 is stacked. And we should not be complaining about that. I know it's more that, there's so much, so many of you are so emotionally invested in what's going to happen in UFC 300. This is a big, passionate fan base. The sport has evolved so quickly in such a short time that, everybody's excited, but we can, we can have our cake and eat it too. So let's have, a couple stacked fights, and then let's make UFC 300 absolutely epic. Now, with that said, let's get into a couple of our regular session, let's transition into a couple of our traditional sections. One, kicking it with Milo. As some of you know, Milo is one of the top up-and-coming surfers in the United States. And I got word that you did very well in a couple contests. Now, what was interesting, I heard you did well in the under 18 division. Now you're only 16. You made it to the final. But what was more impressive, you made it to the finals in the open men's division. So tell me about that.
I don't know. I had 40-year-old men in my heat, and actually probably more than that. And I don't know. I just surfed good and beat some good guys. I had like a pro surfer in the final with me. That was pretty cool.
Oh wow!
So, yeah.
So that's awesome. So, well, congrats on your success there. That is awesome. When is your next contest?
I think it's next Friday or next Saturday.
What contest? What type of contest?
It's a USA Prime. All the kids from like the nation coming.
Yeah, that's the big one. Wow, that's the big one. Well, good luck on that.
Thank you.
Next section is called Kook of the Week. All right, so my Kook of the Week, and it's just a little over a week now, but I am going to include this person. It is the judge who gave that decision to Charles Jourdain. There is no way on earth that Charles Jourdain won that fight. Sean Woodson looked remarkable and showed me something about Sean Woodson. How good can this guy actually be? I mean, he completely outclassed Jourdain. I don't know how that guy gave him a decision. I can't remember the judge's name, but he is my Kook of the Week. And Milo, who is your Kook of the Week?
The two judges that said Sean Strickland lost.
Yeah, you're still mad that Sean Strickland lost.
Yeah.
It was a close fight. It could go either way. I thought Sean Strickland, got him 3-2, but yeah, it was a close fight. So there you have it. Excuse me. Any last words?
Drop the mic.
We're out.